All right, it's that time of the year again where Star Wars fans alike can come together and celebrate their
obsession.
It is more of an obsession.
It's not an obsession. It's a holiday. It's that time of year, you know.
Well, yeah, we're lobbying with this episode to have May 4th be an official federal holiday.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. I think it definitely should be.
If tax day is on all of our calendars, so should May the 4th.
You know, if we can have Hot Dog Day, then we can have Star Wars.
Which day is Hot Dog Day?
True.
I don't know. I just know it is.
You know,
sure
Spider-Man Day is the actual day is August 1st. By the way.
Wow.
Really?
Spider-Man Day is
Okay.
August 1st.
We'll have to do an episode for that.
I celebrate that also. But yeah, Star Wars Day is first in the year, though.
Happy May the 4th,
First.
everybody.
Happy May the 4th. May
May
the
the
4th
4th
be with you.
So I think some people might be wondering why we, as a podcast about faith and theology, religion, and lifestyle questions, why are we doing an episode about Star Wars of all things? I think we'll address that here. I think we have some interesting points to make there, but let's start just talking about what Star Wars means to us, right?
Yeah, I guess let's dive head first. So Star Wars for me, it's almost a way of life, actually. Yeah, I live and breathe Star Wars.
This is the way.
It is the way. If you know me, you know I spend like a lot of money on lightsabers. I have like 5 of them.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
It's almost a little, too much. Those are.
It's just a little.
One could say
This is
so.
a little obsession.
One could say so.
Yeah. But I've always loved Star Wars growing up, and it's just always been one of those ways to escape reality for me. So.
Yeah, Star Wars, like you said, is life. This is the way of life. This is the way. I celebrate Star Wars Day every year. We have to watch movies. We have to, eat Star Wars themed
not have
food.
to, get to.
Oh,
Yeah,
well,
get to.
and have to. It's kind of both on this one. I mean, it's a holiday. Like, are you not gonna watch? Do you get to or have to watch Christmas movies?
Well, do you get to or have to open Christmas
I would say
presents?
there should be May the 4th presents.
You think so?
There
It should all be Star Wars things.
Everybody should get a lightsaber.
There we go. See, I'm with
That might just be a little too expensive.
Anyways, no, Star Wars, ever since probably like 4 was when I watched, The New Hope. That's the Star Wars movie that you have to start with, obviously. And just moving on up, I've always watched Star Wars, always loved it. I wasn't necessarily allowed to watch all of the Star Wars until recently, but I always learned the storyline through Lego Star Wars.
Lego Star Wars, man,
like
I'll
before
tell
I
you.
even watched the prequels, I knew what they're about because of Lego Star Wars.
Awesome.
Did they have words? No, but...
Well, they have words now. That's kind of
Now
an
they do.
improvement
Yeah.
we've seen over time.
But the Lego Star Wars, the complete saga, is legendary.
I still have that game, man. I still have it on the Wii.
Jealous. I had it on the GameCube, and we got rid of it.
I have a Wii in my room still set up with the remotes and the nunchucks. I could still play Lego Star Wars The Complete Saga.
We should go over to your house after this and just play.
We could set it up in this room right now and
There
do
you
a
go.
live stream.
Yeah.
Yeah, we should. Yeah, instead,
Yeah.
no more podcasting.
Yep.
Yeah.
Just live
Lego
streaming.
Star
Live streaming Lego Star Wars. Yeah, I mean, I had the similar experience with Lego Star Wars. I think I probably started playing it after I'd seen the original 6 films, but so Star Wars, I think most of us start watching it as kids. I was probably in 4th, 5th grade. My dad showed them to me in the correct order: 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, and then we saw, the horror of the sequels when they came out in theaters, and we promised we're not going to discuss the sequels and how much they stink.
I liked
but-
The Force Awakens.
I liked it when it came out.
Rise of Skywalker was all right.
And you just don't even have to mention
The other
middle
one.
Yeah.
The movie which shall not be
We'll
named.
move on. Anyways,
Yeah. So, I saw the original Star Wars, and when you're littler, when you're like 4th, 5th grade, it's about kind of like this brick-built Grogu that we have sitting on here if you're watching the video is an example of like a Lego Star Wars set, right? When I was younger, I was like, I love the Lego figures, I love the cool characters, the unique designs, the cool ships. It's the more base level things. But the reason I think it stuck with me, because some things from your childhood don't stick with you, some things do. The reason I think Star Wars is stuck with me is because of its story. It is the perfect hero's journey arc. George Lucas took these archetypes that we've seen in storytelling for a long time, and he really did it perfectly. He made it a really relatable, powerful, unique story, and that's why you saw people in droves in 1977 coming to the theater over and over and over again to see the same film because they'd never seen anything like it. And the storytelling is just so powerful, and it's really something that nobody's been able to replicate since, except maybe with Spaceballs. But
I mean, something a little similar. But yeah, this is something that resonates with you throughout your childhood, throughout middle age, teenage years, and then even into adulthood. I can see myself still continuing to not only watch new Star Wars media, but the same old Star Wars media, because you see the same movie, but you'll get different aspects. You'll think of new things as you're watching the movie. Maybe, second, third, fourth, fifth,
100th
time.
I don't know how many times I've seen the films.
Yeah,
I don't think it's quite 100, but
yeah, maybe I could say in all, the amount of times I've watched like a Star Wars movie is probably maybe 50.
Yeah, probably
pushing
not
towards
very
50, 60,
maybe a little
something
less.
like that.
Yep.
Yeah, but I mean, like Star Wars will grow with you, and
Yes.
and I mean, and that goes into the animated shows too. I mean,
For sure.
everyone knows those aren't just for the kids. I mean,
Well,
the Clone Wars there's deep meaning behind a lot of Star Wars.
And to point out the growing with you phase, as young adults here, we kind of are the age group that grew up with Ahsoka Tano. You kind of see this with Harry Potter, where the actors age with you and the story ages with you. You also see this with the Clone Wars specifically. It doesn't so much happen with the movies because of the ages and release dates, but with the Clone Wars, Ahsoka Tano starts out as this young teenager, and now we're seeing her as young adults, and she's also a young adult in some of the media, and she's actually gotten older now, depending on what you're watching. Yeah. And that really makes the story special when a character ages with you.
Yeah, I remember I actually snuck around watching the Clone Wars movie. I wasn't allowed to watch it at first.
Really? The Clone Wars movie?
Yeah, I was probably like 5, maybe 4 or 5. And my mom didn't want me to watch it because she saw that it was not just for kids. But yeah, anyways, I went down to my neighbor's house and we watched it underneath its bed. So yeah, that's how I watched the Clone Wars movie.
Yeah, man. I mean, you have memories of it when you're little, and because they're still making it today, we have things like The Mandalorian that still resonate.
Yeah.
But like I mentioned kind of earlier, this does tie into the things we discuss on this podcast, whether people realize it or not. Faith talk is about the tough questions in life, and Star Wars really was meant to answer those tough questions, or to at least get people thinking. And there's a quote that I would like to bring up from George Lucas that I don't have the exact quote, but basically he said, Star Wars was created to awaken a sense of spirituality in young people. So he had religious
That's
ideas.
The creator, writer of Star Wars himself.
The original creator, yep.
There you go. It's kind of crazy once you start looking at all the parallels that the Star Wars story has with the religion and politics in the real world, because it's not just fantasy. It also ties into a lot of the problems and issues in the world today even.
Yeah, and I would say that Star Wars necessarily doesn't have exactly, support Christianity or support, like one type of
not
religion.
Directly, no.
And I mean, this is faith talk. We like to bring in all sorts of religions and have a conversation about them. And but it still, like you said, points out spirituality, and I think it really I think we're kind of talking about it the other day. You're saying that it really points out the spirituality, and instead of influencing more I guess atheistic views, it influences spiritual views.
Yes,
more.
It brings out that religious idea, because as the world has become more secular, more young people tendency to lean towards atheism. But what Lucas did is he didn't, like we mentioned, he didn't take Christianity or any religion and specifically address it. What he did was combine all of them, and he talks about this very candidly. He took a lot of Eastern mysticism and Eastern religions, the pantheistic type view of the Force and God.
Everything is God,
But
something like that.
there is Christianity present. You do see
Definitely,
it. With the characters, for instance, of Anakin Skywalker, you see the parallels of Anakin and the Christ myth. Yeah. And I say myth as when C.S. Lewis referred to it as the one true myth. Yeah. So the Christ story influences all of our other stories, and you see Anakin as a chosen prophesied son born of a virgin who goes on to save the world from evil.
Yeah.
There's no coincidence
and
there.
we have to, as Star Wars fans and a faith podcast, have to point out that Anakin is the chosen one.
Of course.
Oh,
yeah. I think
no matter what Disney decides to do now. But.
Yeah, you can make the argument. I think we're kind of talking about how I guess there's different views from the characters in Star Wars as to who it might be. Like even Obi-Wan thought it would be Luke.
Yeah.
But in the end, it's Anakin.
I think really when you look at the Star Wars story and the lore of it, nobody really believed by the end of it that Vader was going to be the chosen one still, because he turned so evil And that's another aspect of Christianity that you see through Star Wars is the aspect of redemption. I think we could probably all agree that the story of Star Wars is redemption. That's what it's about. And you see someone like Darth Vader, who is the wretch. Just like the song Amazing Grace, which is probably the most famous Christian hymn ever written, that save the wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. I'm blind, but now I see.
Yeah.
Darth Vader shows the redemption that we find in Christ.
Yeah, he shows the redemption, but also himself was redeemed, and he was
And he's
redeemed
also
through
the
the
Redeemer
Force.
in Star Wars,
He
yeah.
satisfied balance in the Force,
Yeah.
and kind of all the above. So you can take, several different stories from just from Anakin Skywalker. From the fact that he was, if you think about it, it was canonized, and it came from legends, but it was, it's now taken more for a fact that Anakin was, I guess, created in the womb by Sheev Palpatine.
Yep.
Through the Force.
Through the dark side of the Force.
In partnership with his master Darth Plagueis.
Manipulated. And that's what brings us about his midichlorian count of 20,000. He's this crazy powerful Force being. And if you think about it, he was born through sin. He was born into a sinful world through sin, through the dark side, and he came across and went on his journey. And I think you can think about Jesus. He was born into sin. He was born into the sinful world. He was born to eradicate sin. And he you think about the line of Jesus before. It's terrible people, but that's what makes the story of Jesus so powerful. Also, out of many reasons, is that he came born into sin, born of sinners, and it was a perfect being. Yeah. He was a perfect being, and 100% God, 100% human.
And you also see there's so many parallels, and you can see this biblical narrative throughout all of movies. And it's going to sound like I'm advertising this book because I've talked about it before, but it's so good. And I've been listening to this audiobook by Dr. Frank Turek called Hollywood Heroes: How Your Favorite Movies Reveal God. And he has a chapter in there about Star Wars that I highly recommend, where he dissects all of this. He dissects the character of Han Solo and Darth Vader and the themes throughout Star Wars. Yeah. But to go back to that account of Anakin being created out of the dark side and bringing balance, you also see parallels to the story of Joseph in Genesis 50. When Joseph is sold into slavery, his brothers come to him after their father dies, and they think that he's going to kill them out of revenge for selling him into slavery. But instead he responds with, "What you meant for evil, God meant for good, the saving of many lives." And you see in Star Wars that even though the dark side and Palpatine tried to create Anakin to bring about the destruction of the Jedi, instead that rippled forward like the butterfly effect to eventually destroy him.
Destroy Palpatine himself, and we're going to still ignore the sequels. But
of course.
It ends right there, the originals.
Yeah.
So where it ends, you should bring up Han Solo.
Yes.
Again. The person of Han Solo. And I think that shows, one of the most that's a story of redemption in itself. That's a story of turning into a believer. He was an atheist before, he said, what was it? Hokey religions and ancient weapons are no match for a good blaster at your side, or something like that. And
mumbo jumbo, the dark side. And the light.
He didn't even believe in the Force.
No.
He was against the ideas of the Force. He thought a blaster would be better than a lightsaber.
Yeah. Well, you see such character development through that, and you see a journey similar to the journey of someone like Lee Strobel, J. Warner Wallace, or C.S. Lewis, of atheist to believer. And of course, again, this is allegory, this is metaphor for reality. I think there's no doubt that Star Wars points to Christ, really, when you look at it. It's a story, it's a parable, but it shows something real. There's something real about the human nature side of things. And you see that in Han Solo. You see somebody who starts off not believing because he has this idea already. He has this preconceived notion that there's no way this is true. Yeah. And another thing about Han Solo is that he says it himself in the original Star Wars of, I've traveled all over the galaxy, and I've never seen anything to make me believe that. Ooh. And yet, when he sees it with his own eyes, when it suddenly becomes personal to him, then you see in the movies that we don't like so much, but The Force Awakens, he says, it's true, all of it.
Yeah. It's almost like that Saul to Paul conversion where, obviously Han Solo wasn't slaughtering
Oh,
Jedi's.
He killed Greedo though.
That's true.
You do see that. They
But
showed
then-
that.
Yeah, he
But
shot
then-
first. I mean,
And then he was a witness to it, and then he changed.
yeah.
That's
Oh,
absolutely true. It is definitely Road to Damascus experience that Han Solo. And the cool thing about Star Wars again is a story that you go to escape. I think we mentioned that is you see yourself in that a little bit. You see that redemption. You see, oh, there is hope.
Yeah, and see, that's what I love also is that, you know, throughout the original trilogy, like you see in the first movie, you know, he comes back, but he still struggles with, you know, the idea that he wants the money. You know, he was still a struggler.
He's still a
or
selfish,
smuggler.
egotistical jerk.
Yeah, and I mean, he still goes through that journey, but I mean, towards the end, you see that he really, you know, sticks around. But actually, that can bring in another parallel that's good with the sequel trilogy is that he still struggled. He's still
Is that good though? No, I could get
but
on
he
a whole.
still believes in the Force.
True. I could get on a whole tangent here about how the sequel trilogy
Messes with
reverse develops all the characters, right?
Yeah.
So you take Han Solo, this character who is developed and was this redemptive arc that in the end of Return of the Jedi, you see this man who seems to be complete. He has Leia as his wife. You see their life together. You see he really, his journey's done. And then the sequels kind of undo that, which as an audience going into there for escapism kind of ruins the experience.
Have you guys ever seen Avatar?
The blue people one?
The
or
Last Airbender.
Oh,
And then
I have not actually.
Legends of Korra.
I've heard about
Me and my
this.
sister debate
Yeah.
a lot about that. Anyways, similar things, but continue.
Well, yeah, it's just, I don't want to rant about the sequels because what we're talking about here is storytelling and how stories, because going back to C.S. Lewis for a second, when just powerful conversations you can imagine between J.R.R. Tolkien, author of Lord of the Rings, and C.S. Lewis, author of Chronicles of Narnia. There's depictions you can see of the two of these men, these powerful fiction writers, walking together, talking about Christ and talking about the myth. And J.R.R. Tolkien was a Catholic, a devout Christian Catholic, and Lewis was an atheist. And what actually, just side thing here, Lewis was convinced that God existed because he said, one does not call a line crooked unless he has some idea of what a straight line looks like. He said, the reason I wasn't a believer is because I can't believe that a good God would allow evil to happen. But where did I get this idea of good and evil if there is no God? One does not call a line crooked unless he has some idea of what a straight line looks like. So then that got Lewis to the step of God. The next step was getting to which religion of Christianity. And when he was, and this is where Star Wars and myths and stories come in, because Lewis said, look, Jesus of Nazareth is a myth. There's only one difference. He actually existed.
Yeah.
And when Lewis heard that, he said, oh, I've got to check this out. The one true myth. I don't even understand how that's possible. And when Lewis dissected the person of Jesus of Nazareth, he became a Christian.
Yeah.
And all of our stories point to Jesus' story because it's the one true myth.
Yeah, I think one thing, like, you're kind of going back, 1950s, but I mean, if you look at Star Wars and you compare, look at parallels between even history.
Oh,
and
for
I
sure.
think, and I think even biblical / Christian history too. I mean, you think and you look at the Empire, like, they really hid the Force. They hid the Force. They tried to eradicate it from the galaxy, trying to...
You have this government power, this dictatorship that tries to extinguish this flame of this religion. And how do they do that? They kill every one of the followers of the religion.
Yep.
Yeah, and that's what the Jedi were. They were a religion.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is a good point.
People actually try to bring in the aspect too, talking about our history and the parallels. And this is absolutely something that George Lucas did not try to hide. That Star Wars had absolute allegories to communism, the Soviet Union, and totalitarian dictatorships.
Yeah.
But you also see in Star Wars where some people try to make it about a separation of church and state. Because you see the Jedi being super involved in the political life of this galactic republic.
Yeah. Well, that's why I like to bring up history, because you look at that and then you take a look at maybe what the Christian church became in the medieval age,
Right.
with the Roman Catholic Church, and that was the ultimate power. That was what ruled everyone's lives.
You allowed a group of a religious organization such as the church, which we all stem from one church, but we've kind of when the one church is changed over time.
Yeah.
You see that one church becoming a political power and an authoritarian regime in a sense. And that's what I truly believe that, there's a lot of the spiritual aspects, there's a lot of the religious undertones of Star Wars, which are obviously the most important thing. But I think another crucial part of the Star Wars story is the warning against totalitarianism.
Yeah,
really, that's really important.
And you see that, well, one with the rise of Chief Palpatine. I mean, the parallels to him and basically Hitler. I mean,
Hitler
you
and
think of
Stalin and Mao
stormtroopers. I mean,
and,
like the way he gave himself total power, and Padme says, this is the way liberty dies.
Which, by the way, was totally Jar Jar's fault.
Yep, totally Jar Jar's fault.
Yeah,
that's why he's a Sith Lord.
Misa devote all power to the Supreme Chancellor.
yeah.
Quote from
They
Jar Jar.
used the most hated character in Star Wars to give authoritarian dictatorship powers to Palpatine. Also, by the way, the real warning here is not to let an emergency lead to authoritarianism.
Yeah.
Seriously, hear this. If you watch the prequel trilogy, Lucas was very intent on this. The Clone Wars raging, the politics there at the time said, there's an emergency going on. We need to give emergency powers to this guy, and he never gave them back.
And you see how that fell was through chaos.
Yes.
And that's seen through history. Like, the Jedi, they were the keepers of the peace. But as soon as war sprang out and they all became generals, they all became
started
involved
to
in
lose their
politics,
way. Yeah.
war, and they started to keep secrets from each other. Weird things were happening, and Anakin could see this. He saw through the lies of the Jedi. Unfortunately, he took the wrong path down.
Yeah.
It ended up killing the younglings.
Yeah.
But you see that, and that happened through history. The church started out, with Paul and everything that he was doing, sending out the letters. But as it went through and it got more involved, and then more of the I guess important, powerful, you can say the Roman emperors, they got involved in Christianity.
Sure.
But
Constantine.
Yeah.
In fact, you'll hear that a lot. Just a side point here. People will say that Constantine kind of invented Christianity because of his legislation of religion, in a sense. And that's, again, what you see in Star Wars. You see the Jedi being legislated, essentially.
Yeah. And then as soon as all this chaos, then it leads to a new power. And the original, I guess, religion, the original values were lost, and that led into the Dark Ages. And that's what Obi-Wan called it. He said, before the dark times, before the Empire. The Empire was the dark times. That was the Middle Ages, in a sense, in Star Wars. And you can really see that with the absence of the Force. And that's when we bring again Han Solo. No one believed in the Force. No one knew that it was there. And in essence, you can see that in today's day and age. For sure. I think that's where the original trilogy was really pointing at that. I mean, we've lost spirituality.
Yeah, we have. That is so true. And you see, we use the word darkness to kind of describe the original trilogy era of the Star Wars story. You see that when the Empire takes over and there's a lack of belief in something greater than ourselves. That power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. You see that in Star Wars. You see the power dynamics, and you see what happens when someone like that comes into power. You see that naturally we want to be in control, and if there's a group of people who we disagree with and we're control over them, we will eradicate them when given enough power. And we've seen that in our world today, where people in high positions of authority have realized, hey, maybe this Christianity thing doesn't benefit me so much. And then they try to push back against it. But you see that in a secular world, like C.S. Lewis said, there is no good, there is no evil if there is no God, because you have no standard of morality.
And that just pulls up probably one of my favorite Star Wars movies. I would almost put I'm close to putting it at number one. Just with the more I think about it, the more I talk about it, the more I watch it. Rogue One, such an amazing movie. And you think about it, what do we want now, and what did the people want then? Is hope.
Hope and freedom.
Hope for the galaxy. Hope and freedom for the galaxy. Hope in the Force, and the Force wasn't even present in Rogue One, but they still said, "May the Force be with you."
Yes, because the rebellion kept that hope.
Yeah.
They kept that spirituality in Star Wars.
And that's what that hope was. That's what hope was the Force, basically. And you can see that in Cheer. And throughout Rogue One, I mean, they all, sacrificed basically for hope. But they were...
Greater love has no one than this, the one who lays down his life for his friend.
And you see, they were at peace, though.
Yeah.
They, each with, I mean, I'm sorry to spoil the movie if you haven't seen it, but everyone dies in the end.
6 years old.
Like,
okay?
you see the entire,
Yeah.
the entire cast being killed off, but they all have such a peaceful look on their face because they're giving that hope and they're spreading hope to the galaxy, and they know that they're doing that.
You see that sacrifice as well. And again, just those parallels, because the teachings of this one man, Jesus of Nazareth, have influenced the world in a way that none of us can even fathom. Every single one of our stories have these moral values that were taught by this Jewish carpenter 2,000 years ago. And that includes stories like Star Wars. We see that sacrifice is good, that the light side conquers over the dark side. Where do we get these values from?
Well,
And Star Wars chalks that up to the Force or spirituality or something outside of you and I.
Yeah, and what I love about this is that conversation can go on forever and ever because, I mean, you think about it, yeah, the story started with Jesus, but it started way before then with prophecy.
Of course.
Delivered from God. I mean, you think of Genesis 3:15. It's where that
First
this
messianic
story,
prophecy.
the ultimate story, first comes into place. Genesis 3:15, and you can see that story played out in all of the media today. Like, I mean, that's the story that people love. That's the story that people are satisfied with. But, I mean,
Yeah.
where's the true meaning? Where does it begin? You know.
That's crazy. I think that's the perfect point. Just like, mic drop, boom, walked out of the stage.
I wish we could say more. I mean, even
Yeah.
I wanted to touch on like the church and the rebellion. What their support and hope means. But you can think about that for yourself, maybe.
Yeah, well, this could go on for hours and hours.
I mean,
we got to cut it off.
We absolutely could do full-on episodes of this. I'm just glad we could do a special, a little bit longer episode about this, and to point out that all our stories reveal his story or history.
Yes, and I want to point out again that we're not saying anything that like Star Wars is something to worship.
No,
Star
not
Wars
at
is
all.
a way to
It's an
worship because it's
allegory.
not. But it's again, it's something like
parable.
that. And there's people that will take it like that. Like
course.
if it shows values like that, then it's it's not good. Like there's something called Little Light Studios who, if they see a parallel of Christianity and something, they're like, I don't know about that. But that's not what the point about this is.
Yeah, no, and we're not calling that group out.
of
They're
course.
entitled to that opinion. But even with something, this is where I'd really come to fires. Even with something like Harry Potter, there are incredible parallels to the Christ myth in Harry Potter, because our stories, what resonates with us the most is that Christ myth.
Yeah.
So even something like Harry Potter has incredible parallels, even maybe more so than Star Wars, to Christ.
And I mean, you got to say it again. All of our stories
Point to his story.
point to his story. Yeah.
Boom. Thanks so much for tuning in. Hopefully you enjoyed this, and may the force be with you.
May the force be with you.
Yeah, God bless, guys.